Breaking the wall between science and ethnic minority youth. Joana Moscoso, native scientist, United Kingdom.
The first time I learned about bacteria, I was 9 years old and it was at school. It completely changed my life. From the age of 9, I knew I wanted to become a scientist to study these living organisms that we cannot see. But this was a problem. I come from a rural place in the north of Portugal, in the middle of green mountains by the river, a place far away from science and far away from higher education at that time. So when I was telling the people around me that I wanted to become a scientist, the reactions I got were the weird look, the frown face, the comment, "What? You crazy? Why do you want to be a scientist? No, go be something else." Well, I did not listen. I became a scientist. And when I felt I was a scientist, for the first time in my life, I was in London doing my PhD, I then felt really strongly about breaking the wall for other children, breaking the barrier of accessing science for other children. And I met Tatiana, the co-founder of Native Scientists, and we learned that actually this wall was not of the same dimension for every children. And in fact, ethnic minority and migrant children have very often a bigger barrier, as they are, on average, 2 times more likely to underachieve in science than their non-migrant peers. So we started designing, implementing, and evaluating a science education and outreach program targeting specifically these ethnic minority and migrant children and connecting them with scientists. We started in London, we were living there, we were Portuguese, so we started bringing together small teams of 4 or 5 Portuguese-speaking scientists to go to London schools to talk in Portuguese about their science and their work to kids who were talking Portuguese at home with their parents. It was a breakthrough. It was a breakthrough because the scientists had these huge smiles that I had never seen before on their faces, and the children were super inspired by the interaction with the scientists. They were starting to feel that people like them could be a scientist, that they themselves could be a scientist if they wanted to. And they also started to realize that the language that they were speaking at home with their parents was not just the language of go brush your teeth, go put your toys away. It was actually the language of science as well. This was the image. This is one of the images from one of the workshops. In these workshops, we have a speed dating format where the kids get to interact with 4 or 5 scientists. And it's a bit of a science tapas because the scientists come from different fields of science. So the kids get to taste the different fields of science. And since we were created in 2013, it's been 8 years now, we've established more than 20,000 connections, meaningful connections between scientists and children with a common cultural background and heritage language. One of the biggest learnings we've made, well, it's been an incredible journey for me, but also for the more than 1,000 scientists that on a voluntary basis have joined Native Scientists and have been to the schools to showcase their work to these children. And we've learned that it's important to put people at the center of our work, to establish these human connections so that science becomes meaningful for these children. And different children or different people have different needs, different unmet potential. So we really have to design specialized science education and outreach programs that tap into those needs and into that unmet potential and help them nurture. Our goal is really that every one of us looks around us, reach out, and gets together, because together we can change the world for the better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joana, for this inspiring talk. Sorry, I have to be the time officer, so that's why you hear a lot of noises here. So it's time now to get questions from our audience and from our jury. Yes, we have the first question here from one of our juries.
So could you give us an example if a scientist from around the world wants to participate in what you do? How do they do that?
Yes, at the moment we are in 9 European countries, roughly 30 cities, and we do it in 10 different languages. So people go on our website, they sign up to volunteer, and then we have local coordinators in the different cities for the different languages who are the organizers of the workshop. And then they are usually also scientists, actually. And they bring together these small teams of 4 or 5 scientists that go to the school to talk about their work. It's all on a voluntary basis, and we provide the training. It's so important for this to be effective, to provide the training on science communication for children, really. And yeah.
Great. So, do we have any more questions? Yes, we have a question from one of our online audience.
Yes, exactly. One of our digital participants says, great way to present relatable and attainable role models to kids. Did this have effects on their families and communities too?
Yes, it did. So actually, in the first couple of workshops that we organized, we actually had teachers telling us, 2 of the kids are not coming to the class today because the parents don't want their kids to meet the scientists. And 3 years later, in the same community, the same teacher says, I actually now have parents wanting to put their kids in my class because they know the scientists are coming. So children go back home and they start talking about what they have experienced. And this has really broke the wall also for the families and the communities.
Fabulous. So, do we have more questions from our audience here, or from our virtual audience, or from our juries? Yeah, we have a question here from one of our audience.
I try it once more. How often does each kid meet a scientist? This is a single situation?
Yeah. Our intervention is a short intervention. So the kids, before the real workshop, they do some worksheet. The teacher implements a worksheet that we give to them. And then the real workshop happens. They meet 4 or 5 scientists, depending on how many scientists are in that workshop. And then after the workshop, we give freedom to the teachers, and we encourage teachers to implement activities that help consolidate the learning. We actually worked with linguists and social sciences from STEM education and educational psychology, and we did a randomized control trial to look at the effectiveness of this short intervention for these children. And we are happy. The results really show that even though it's a short intervention, and I quote the conclusion from the research, it fosters migrant students' motivation for science. So, instigates the feeling that science is important for me. If I want, I can be a scientist, and I would like to do more science activities outside school.
Amazing. Yeah, with this note, I think it's time to move on to our next science engager. But first, give Joana a massive round of applause. Thank you very much.